Welcome to Salve, a therapeutic podcast for digital ailments. We're here to ease your online aches and entrepreneurial anxieties, one session at a time. With our host, Jordan Brannon, and today's guest, Reuben Mattinson from RJM Tax Exemption. Today's worrying condition, the difficulty of maintaining your health as you age.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan Brannon, host of the Salve podcast and co-founder of Coalition Technologies. We are here to help you with your digital aches and pains. And today we've got an amazing guest back with us for the second time, Reuben Mattinson from RJM Tax Exemption, who is going to help us treat that middle-aged weight gain and, frankly, some of that lack of health that you get as you start to get a little bit older, and maybe some of your old habits aren't working out quite as well. Reuben, would you give us a quick introduction to yourself and your business, what you do and who you serve? And we'll jump in from there and talk about exactly how it is that you've been treating some of those challenges for your business.
Jordan, thank you so much for having me back. Round two, I'm raring, excited, ready to go. So as you've touched on as well, the health of it all, interestingly, I was a physical therapist as my first degree. So I'm going to try and bring some physiology into there. But we're talking about e-commerce, business and stuff today. And we are sales tax and all things tax, really, e-commerce specialists. So we work with businesses all over the world who need help with their taxes, and we create really great turnkey solutions, individualized for their businesses, to do all of the heavy lifting for them.
Awesome. Taxes are, as always, a popular topic just because the states and municipalities here are always finding creative ways to borrow from each other and then kind of screw up what the other city or state or county did. And so nothing quite is the same. It looks similar on paper to a novice like myself, but then you start talking to somebody who knows what they're looking at, and all of a sudden they're like, well, hey, this state, this county, this street line, it can be a lot different and can result in some pretty hefty tax penalties. So certainly a great resource to our audience. I do want to dial in on part of your story, and I'll recap a little bit for our audience, our prior conversation, and really how that takes us to today. So Reuben had the amazing foresight and skill and opportunity to launch this business pre-COVID, and certainly saw a massive growth through COVID. Really was able to, and I'll give credit to you, Reuben, because again, a lot of people did start businesses during COVID or just prior, but didn't have the success and didn't scale. And so that was really what our first episode talked about, was just that rapid growth, how to deal with the HR issues, really some of the mental health challenges, and all of those different things. But that brings us to today's conversation, because you've grown. It's just hitting on all cylinders. And then all of a sudden, some of that momentum seems to be stealing away. Tell me about when you started to become a bit more aware, like, hey, this growth cycle isn't going to last. It's not going to be exactly the same. What were maybe some of the first pains that helped you kind of spot that when it was happening?
Yeah, I mean, all of the usual kind of just hard data and stats, when they start to show your general profit, your profit margin, your influx of clients signing up versus clients leaving and closing down. So you can kind of pick up fairly early doors. And for us, I guess we started to see that a year or two ago. And it, wasn't really hard to notice. So at that point, you're starting to think, what have I been relying on here, and how do I need to pivot? How do I need to change? And I think, that's when we really started asking questions.
Okay. And I want to actually go back to something you said. You mentioned a couple of stats, and I know your business is subscription type. There's a retention component to it, even as service. But one of the things that I see for a lot of businesses that have grown rapidly or are growing past that solopreneur is a lot of them don't have reporting. They don't actually have the data points. And so it's not until they actually look at the bank account and the bank account is going the other way that they start to realize something's there. And they're not in a point to analyze it at all. So maybe just as, again, speaking to that audience, and again, you have some of that financial literacy experience with your industry. A lot of our listeners are e-commerce businesses. We probably about 60% of our listeners will be e-commerce brands. Mm-hmm. What are some reports that you think would be really helpful for a business that has been growing? and they need accuracy, they need maturity around. Any that you would call out just top of line and maybe have been really helpful for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we're obviously more service-based and e-commerce businesses often more product-based. I mean, they can be service as well. For us, we were using Zero, obviously a great bookkeeping software. We had great accountants. I'd love to say I was the one clocking all of this stuff and being like, oh, I'm the genius behind measuring the health of my business. But I had great people doing it for me. But I think it's just, again, seeing your margin is a big one. Like, what was my margin now shrinking?
Hmm.
Not just the margin, but also the gross flow that's coming in. I think both of those are equally as important because your gross can half, but if your margin has gone up and equally your margin can go down and your gross sales can and hold it up. So I think it's weighing that up. And then you start to look at where are we just wasting money, where we've got a little bit comfortable, as we're talking about today, in our middle age, being overweight, the great comparison. Where have we just got comfortable? Where can we start to save money and tighten up on things? And that can come from all different measures with the staff themselves. Obviously trying to look after them as much as possible, but thinking maybe where have I just been a bit kind of brash with the success that I've had in the past, because you're protecting the business is ultimately protecting your staff as well. So you've got to make some hard calls there in the short term to protect your staff in the long term. So there was lots of little bits and pieces like that.
So we'll say, excuse me. Top of line, we'll say P&L, having an accurate understanding of P&L. A lot of times there's some boogeymen that exist in the assumption of revenue, and also in that just understanding like, hey, this is where my expenses are and what they're actually going towards. Because again, talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, there's assumptions that are being made about how much you're investing on something to get something back. And there's maybe a lack of clarity there. So start there. Also look at maybe that a new customer acquisition, in your case, new customer acquisition plus retention. What's that lifetime value if you're in e-commerce? Having a good handle on all of those things and a good source of truth that you can really rely on and you're tracking over time is probably worth flagging. So some of the metrics maybe to call out, just that you mentioned, one would be P&L, just having a good understanding of where your profit is actually coming from. A lot of businesses that we've talked to, they think they know what's the revenue driver, but revenue doesn't necessarily mean profit. Also having a good handle on expenses and why those expenses exist and whether they really should for where your business is today. Which again, a lot of businesses as they grow through that sort of infancy stage through the toddler years can get sort of lost. You assume what worked always still works. So that brings us again to that middle-aged moment. And you're facing a specific one and have been facing a specific one. Maybe talk to us a little bit about how marketing has become the McDonald's for you and maybe how you're thinking about changing that and getting back to health.
Yeah, so I guess there's so many different ways to market. And for us, the low-hanging fruit or the low-hanging Big Macs in this scenario were business-to-business connections, and making the connections with the right people, and also going to conferences and networking and building those relationships where people would supply us with a lot of clients. So that's what saw our insane amount of success and is what I guess tided us over for a long time. But with this decline, which we're talking about, which is, happened to some extent, that's when you've got to start to think, well, we can't rely on these people forever. We can't rely on word of mouth forever. So it's when you've got to change your diet, like this comparison of marketing, to a healthier one, which is any healthy diet. These crash diets, which get you things quickly, they're never sustainable. We've all got those friends who have gone on these crash diets and maybe it works for a bit, but they don't sustain them. And I think the equivalent of a really healthy but sustainable diet in the marketing space is starting to move on to organic sources of traffic and revenue, which you have control over, or a good amount of control over, which is when we start to look at SEO and start to look at, paid advertisement. For us, this is where we're starting to turn our eyes to. And actually, the more you do it, the more exciting it is because you see a much longer term projection for your business.
Yeah, we had a similar growth story. We started with people and people we knew, and then people they knew, and that was sort of the early success for Coalition. And because we were very focused on our own SEO, we were able to really begin to move beyond that circle, maybe sooner than a lot of companies would have. And what was surprising to me is that I always thought that the opportunities that we were connecting with as a small business were pretty representative of the larger market. And once we began to see success in SEO, we realized how much bigger the market actually was. And we were just only able to see within our own near-term horizon because of what we had experienced. Do you feel like that's something that you're becoming more aware of as you're doing more in the digital marketing front? You're beginning to see a lot of different facets to your industry and opportunity?
Yeah, see the wood for the trees, see the forest for the trees, as it were. Yeah, I think it's crazy when your eyes really start to open of the potential scalability, because as we've touched on, we had great success at the start and multi-million dollars in gross early on. But when you think of now the position we are in as a business, we're industry leaders in a sense of reviews and prices. Really, if you then get in front of the right people and have a scalable model with your paid advertisement and with your SEO reinvestment, it's actually a bit bewildering to think of where this business can lead to. I think often in the past, I'd read a lot of books or listen to audibles and podcasts, and you'd hear these success stories and you'd think, it's almost like how on earth have they even got to this place, like the size of their business? But
Hmm.
really, the internet is a crazy, crazy place. You think of a brick and mortar store, the amount of people who walk past the store in a day. Well, think of the sheer flow. There's no comparison. There's no comparison to
Mhm.
kind of the physical and the word of mouth. So yeah, for me, my eyes are well and truly being opened. I feel like I'm seeing the Matrix, which is an appropriate analogy with the ones and zeros, with it being computer based. And it's exciting. It is really exciting. Yeah.
One of the things that I like about working with a well-established business that has a proof of concept, understands its advantage in the market. You've mentioned that, your best pricing and also this amazing reputation, which is really super valuable. And when you have those two things down, internet marketing, digital marketing becomes a healthy fuel for the business instead of an unhealthy fire. When we jump in and we're working with a business that's unproven, doesn't really know like where their price market fit is, who their audience is, how to scale, there's often this struggle point of, as we begin to grow and increase exposure, it backfires, frankly, because we're starting to drive this traffic, but they're having substandard experiences because things aren't shipping, people aren't picking up phones, aren't responding to emails. So it really is exciting for us as an agency to be working with a business like yours, where you've done the rapid growth, you've seen the scale, you sort of have those things nailed down, and people still love you for it, which is, again, check out the Trustpilot reviews. That really is really crucial. Like, how much better prepared do you feel like you are for digital marketing because of some of that groundwork that you've been able to lay over the previous 6 years?
That is a brilliant question. Yeah, so much more ready. And I think it's easy to look back as a business owner and think, oh man, I wish I'd done that sooner. I have like, as the CEO, I think I could so easily blame myself for like the decline that we've seen as a business and think, why couldn't have I done this? And hindsight is a wonderful thing, but also thinking you were ready and prepared in the past when you weren't is an interesting thought process, because actually back when I could have implemented it sooner, we were nowhere near as strong as a business in our reputation, in our kind of thought process of who we were targeting, our staff as a whole. So you're right. I think it's easy to beat yourself up, but if you are a business out there who's listening, who's been going for a long time, and you're getting that, you've maybe lost your spark a bit, and you're feeling a bit stagnant, and you just kind of, oh, is this just how it's going to be? It doesn't have to be that way. Actually, you've been around for a long time for a reason. You have a loyal customer base. You're selling a good product or service. You are a good business owner. You know what you're doing. So to open your eyes to the sheer potential of what marketing and SEO can bring, I think can reignite that spark, give you that enthusiasm back. And who knows where that can take your business.
Yep. So talk to me a little bit about the progression towards SEO. So you're coming off of this B2B sales experience, traveling to conferences, word of mouth, partnerships, awesome reputation, which is always worth its weight in gold. As you started to look at all of the different opportunities that exist for digital marketing, what sort of led you down the path towards SEO specifically, towards paid activities? Walk me through your decision-making process and maybe some of the harder experiences, harder decisions that you maybe had there.
Yeah, I think there was a very real fear, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will relate to that fear when it comes to, am I just going to be burning money? Like, if my business is already declining, like, it's almost like the last thing you think of is to then spend more money.
Mm-hmm.
But really, the light bulb went on in my head, like, Reuben, look, you've got to be reinvesting into this business, and in the right way now before it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the real light bulb. So we initially, I guess, got dragged kicking and screaming a little bit and thought, well, we'll just do a bit of SEO ourselves, that'll be okay. And then we got just like one random freelancer guy to do it, who some people said he was all right. He did a terrible job and held us up again another 6+ months. So, hey, those who are listening, one of my favorite sayings is cheap is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you try and take the cheap option in the short term, you're going to pay for it in the long term. Equally so, if you think, I'm going to buy a cheap Hoover and cut take a shortcut, get a Dyson, get a solid quality Hoover, and it'll last you. And it's the same in this scenario. So for us, we had to learn the hard way, unfortunately, with that a bit. And with paid advertisement, that kind of came again as a bit later on for the fear of us burning money. But when I realized, as we've talked about, when your business reputation is good and you believe in your product and service, why wouldn't you? And there's always the option to scale. You don't have to put a crazy amount of money in. So that's what really led us to working with you guys when we looked online and really probably looked at what people look in us as a business, looked at our reputation, our reviews, our kind of pricing point, our positioning. And that was a big turning point for us, I think, in our mentality and as a business, where we thought actually connecting into with a business like-minded like us, strong reputation, and the awesome. Sky's the limit, really.
Glad we did connect. I want to go back to that comment that cheap is expensive. One of the things we see a lot in digital marketing, and frankly marketing in general, is that when you go cheap, that money never comes back. So often when we're talking to a business and they have maybe longer journeys than you in reaching a point of talking to a company like Coalition, they'll have spent 6 months with the freelancer at a very inexpensive number, but they've missed that time, they've missed that opportunity, and the dollars that were invested got thrown away. And then some of them will even go to a cheap agency, which is basically it's 5 times, 10 times more expensive than the freelancer was, but it's still something where they're throwing this money out, and it could be even a paid situation where it's going out quickly. And ultimately the result is that none of that comes back, and they, finally begin to take it seriously and think about investing. And a company like ours comes in, we're not necessarily able to work with anything that was done by a prior agency because, it's automated. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't actually support your selling propositions, where it's not using keywords that are advantageous for you commercially, or even things that you're maybe not going to compete on or wanting to compete on. And so all of a sudden, we're basically all of that paid for work has to go out the window, and we've got to start over again. So I really would stress that if you're out there and you're listening, and if you've been dabbling and you've been trying to, again, McDonald's, good example. Glad we started our call that way. The dollar value menu looks cheap until you got to get a new heart stent put in at the age of 40, right? Then all of a sudden, it's quite a bit more expensive. So talk to me a little bit about how you've chosen to strategize with us around SEO, around pay-per-click, take some of those prior successes and help them use those to inform your current campaigns.
Yeah, I think we spent a lot of time realizing who our ideal clients were, and really seeing where we best outcompete our competitors. So I think that, again, this whole, oh, I wish I'd done it in the past, well, we wouldn't have had that knowledge if we hadn't come through that to this point.
Mhm.
So it's very helpful when it comes to, as you've touched on, keyword targeting, to know to what to compete for. And yeah, I guess a little bit with that comes with the branding as well, which you guys have obviously helped with to some extent, with just getting the website as appealing to the eyeballs that hit the page as possible, and as concise as possible, and that flows nicely. So I think, yeah, it's come with just a lot of trial and error, and probably when it's took us to see people doing things badly the way they have, to open our eyes to what does look good, and trusting people like yourself to do it in a different way, and also to trust the process, as you've touched on that. It's not a quick fix. These things, you've got to invest, you've got to stick in it, you've got to dig your heels in, you've got to trust who you're working with. So yeah, knowing who to trust is a big part of it as well.
I think that comes back to the reviews conversation, both for us as a service provider. You mentioned that you checked out our reviews before hiring us. And certainly, I think one of the things that we've seen be really helpful with your campaigns is those reviews. They make it much easier to convert a random website visitor from search into someone who's going to want to pay, because they look at it and say, like, hey, this is really obvious. This seems like a no-brainer. Talk to me a little bit about your review gathering strategy. You don't have to give away any secret sauce, but when did you start to connect the dots that, hey, these reviews are really important? And, what were some of the things that have worked for you in helping to get reviews? Because a lot of businesses do struggle digitally to get sufficient reviews and make it systematized in some way.
Yeah, so I think initially, we spotted that quite early doors, thankfully. Our review page has been out there on Trustpilot for nearly the entirety of our business, which I'm very thankful I did, because it's now in an incredible place because of that. And again, these things aren't built overnight, unless, some businesses try and find shortcuts and various ways to do it, but you can see when a page is organic or not. So starting at the right time helped. How we got our reviews, I think, it all starts from a place of your staff being looked after well. If your staff are looked after well, your clients will be looked after well, and they'll want to leave you a review. But I think even more so, when your staff are looked after, they will go the extra mile at pursuing reviews and in an authentic and organic and natural way. And we did do some incentives as well. When staff members' names come up in reviews, we give kind of gift cards and awards and gifts, and I just think that's nice, because I think, of course, they deserve that when they've been mentioned in a review. So that's helped, and we started to automate it more as well, kind of within the last few years, where we send automated emails out to the clients, as well as approaching them personally to say, look, if you've enjoyed our service, leave a review. So we combine both a personal touch and an automated part to try and I guess tick as many boxes as we can, and the staff seem to be pretty motivated as well to do that.
Yeah, I love getting team members involved. One of the things that, again, speaking for entrepreneurs or those out there, anytime you can get alignment between what your customers or clients want and need, and your team members want and need, and you as a company want and need, anytime all three of them are working towards the same objective and are incentivized to do that, you're going to be in an amazing spot. And reviews are a great category like that. Clients and customers want to be really happy with their purchase or their hiring decision. The inclination that we have as people is we don't want to make mistakes with our money. And your team members, they can help support that objective. And if you give them incentives to really help encourage that happiness and satisfaction, it works out for your business. Because if you're in a service-based business, kill me, Zoom. If you're in a service-based business, you're in a spot where, again, repeat business, word of mouth, referrals is super critical. If you're in an e-commerce business, that lifetime value is going to go up. Those reviews are going to go up. And so you really want to find those places where you can get that alignment. And reviews are a great one, where if you put that extra incentive in front of your team members, it can really, really pay off. One cool a trick, if you will, that I've seen working for one of our service businesses lately is commenting on some of their clients in public with a LinkedIn profile. So we've actually started doing this ourselves because it was working so well, where the CEO was out and just saying, so happy to be working with your business on LinkedIn, making a post about a new client. And inevitably, it was getting engagement and often very favorable engagement from points of contact with those companies. And then all of a sudden, they're able to reach back out and say, hey, would you leave us a review since you're so kind to already do that on LinkedIn, essentially. And we've seen some of our clients doing more of that LinkedIn boosted, like our client is bragging about us, we're going to boost this particular post. And that's
Wow,
created a
it's
really good
clever.
flywheel. Yeah. So it's good because you get, again, people are inclined to want a good experience. And I think sometimes as businesses, we fear that negative because inevitably one's going to come. And we often get so afraid of that we forget, like, hey, most of our clients, we've got 300 different, accounts with us that are, in different forms of campaign management. They're there and they've been there for a long time. That's not by chance. And so that one review you got 2 years ago shouldn't scare you off of the ask or a strategy that tries to get more people leaving you those reviews. So that's really, really helpful. How often are you using, we'll keep on the review subject for a moment. How often are you using reviews as part of your digital marketing strategy?
Well, I mean, when people go on our website, it's the first thing they hit with, ranks number 1 in the whole US for consultation and for company registry. We're ranked number 2 in the whole of the US for tax preparation as well. But why would you put number 2 when you can put number 1? But people get hit with it straight away. You've got a reel of the reviews as well. And we've got more personalized reviews where people have gone out of their way, like really quite special businesses and who are worth, putting out there, who are willing to leave you a review. So yeah, multiple layers really, because as you've said, building that trust and authenticity is so important. And when these things can even be fake to some extent with people, you want to really drill it home. We haven't faked this. We're the real thing and we're the real deal. So we use it a lot. And even just in passing conversation, like why wouldn't you if you're in this position for the sake of trustworthiness and building relationships, say, and mention and where you're at as a company.
Yeah, I do think there's a moving target today with reviews because of so many businesses are taking underhanded routes of trying to promote themselves and not even incentivizing a real customer to give them a review that they probably would have been happy to give anyways, but actually just going out and buying trash. And you see that with Trustpilot sometimes. It's like the 3-star or 5-star review, and then it says yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. Yeah. It is sad, yeah.
Cool. And then I think one of the good things that you can get out of a good review is the actual insight into your customer. And it's super helpful from a keyword strategy. It's super helpful in terms of developing your landing pages and thinking about how you present your product or service to your customer. Because so often what I find when I read a review is, as a business, I have this assumption about why I was getting hired. And then down here, what actually stood out to my customer was this. And it changes that sales cycle. It changes the presentation. A good example would be if you're in e-commerce and you sell a dress, we think of people buying the dress for the aesthetic of the dress. Inevitably, what you see in reviews, though, is they like the way it fits around the hips, or they like the way that the length against the knee. And all of a sudden, you have a bit of insight into that buying decision that you really have not talked about because it wasn't in your product description, and your customer was surprised by it. And all of a sudden, you take that and you make that a part of your product description or part of your marketing. Customers say they love the length, they love the fit around the hip. All of a sudden that becomes what drives your conversion rate to pick up by a couple extra percentage points. And that certainly happens with service businesses as well. Have you started to lean into some of that feedback you get from your reviews to help with your SEO copy and content and your paid landing pages?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, though, I've not thought about that a huge deal. I'm thinking that's actually really good. I think probably what's come out of that the most historically is obviously valuing our customer service and how people are treated and the personal touch. So when businesses are so eager just to get straight into AI and automate everything, we're like, actually, we don't want to do that because people love the personal touch. But also just the price point, I think people love that, which is where our price guarantee match kind of initiative came from, because we're so confident now with that, and that's what people are looking for, that we give this guarantee match. If they find any company, established company online doing what we do, we'll just match it. So that came from it, but that's a really good point actually, Jordan. Yeah, I think it's worth digging into the metrics of that in a bit more detail.
Awesome. One of the things you'll also see as we're getting close to our time, talking SEO strategy, all those reviews are really important in today's AI SEO space. Trustpilot, especially, which is a partner of Coalition's, has sort of a credibility with ChatGPT and with others, and you'll start to see them showing up in prompts. And part of what ChatGPT and all of the large language models really want to do is they want to tell the full buying story, and they'll pitch against you and they'll pitch for you. And so things like your price guarantee on your website, in your content, that's also paired with some amazing reviews, makes it a lot harder for an AI SEO to sell against you, an AI search engine to sell against you. And so it really becomes beneficial for your AI SEO outcomes, where ChatGPT is leading people from the top of funnel to the bottom of funnel and then back to your site for initial sign up and a trial. So it does work out really, really well. In terms of watching those AI metrics, I know our teams have set up some initial dashboards for you guys. Are you looking at that pretty regularly, or only when we show up in reports and send them your way?
Yeah, I think, as we've probably touched on across the couple of episodes, I have a very full-on brain. So the more I can hand off and trust with people like you and not have to look at it, that is very valuable indeed, Jordan. So I try not to look as much as I can. As equal of my stocks portfolio, I try not to look at it, because you know what it can do to the soul, to the mind. So actually, again, if it's in good hands, it's in good hands. And I think that's great.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to dive in maybe in a future episode and run through some of these metrics together, because it's very interesting what's happening with SEO, what's happening with AI SEO, and certainly with paid search. And there's probably some good strategies to run through there. So Reuben, before we close up today, I just want to say thank you again for being back with us. I'd love for you to have the opportunity once again, just let our audience know, many of them are in e-commerce and are US focused, who it is that you like to work with, who's the ideal business, and again, a little bit of an overview of the services that you're providing.
If you are listening and you sell products online in any shape or form, you are our people. So come on over to our website, rjmtaxexemption.com. That's RJM. Sorry for my British accent. Might sound like a G. It's not. And we would love just to have a free consultation with you. We'll give you a free tax liability assessment. Absolutely no obligation. We're not going to hard sell you on anything. We'd love to meet you. We're going to guarantee you the cheapest price on the market. What have you got to lose? Come on over and come say hi.
And I'll call out, because I was looking at our SEO strategy here, and the reviews are called out. They're real. They're a part of what our team has highlighted. So getting best price in the market and also getting some crazy good reviews is a pretty hard to beat 1-2 punch. So do check them out. We'll be back in a future episode of Cyber Salve, looking to treat your digital aches and pains. So appreciative Reuben joining us to help us get past that middle-aged gut that comes as we maybe need to look at changing our diet. And we'll look at another pain point in a future episode. Bye, everyone.